My name is Pauline. I'm 27 years old and I've spent my entire life trying to please my mother. Nothing was ever good enough. Not my grades, not my career in art, not my apartment in Chicago. Meanwhile, my younger brother Thomas could do no wrong. 3 days ago, after I missed a family dinner for an important client meeting, Mom called me a disappointment who would never amount to anything. Then she had the nerve to demand $2,000 for Thomas's graduation party. Where are you watching from today? Hit like and subscribe to see what I did that finally changed everything. Growing up in suburban Chicago with Margaret and Robert Williams was like living in a constant evaluation zone. My mother, a former beauty pageant contestant with a collection of runner-up trophies displayed prominently in our living room, carried the weight of her unfulfilled dreams heavily. She had wanted to become a model or television personality, but marriage and children redirected her path. Instead, she channeled her ambitions through her children, particularly Thomas. Dad worked as a senior executive at a financial consulting firm. His frequent business trips meant he was physically absent for much of our childhood. When present, he maintained emotional distance, more comfortable discussing report cards than feelings. He provided financial stability, but delegated the actual parenting to Mom. The family dynamic was established early. Thomas, 5 years younger than me, was the golden child from the moment he kicked his first soccer ball. Athletic, academically gifted, and socially charming, he embodied everything my mother wished she could showcase to her country club friends. He was her second chance at vicarious success. I was different. Quiet and artistic, I spent hours drawing in my bedroom while Thomas collected trophies. My mother would walk by my door sighing loudly before saying, "Pauline, when are you going to do something productive? Art won't put food on the table." Meanwhile, Thomas's soccer tournaments warranted family road trips and celebrations, regardless of outcome. One memory stands out painfully clear. When I was 14, my art teacher entered my watercolor painting in a statewide competition. To my shock and delight, I won first place. The local newspaper even published a small article with my photo. I rushed home clutching the newspaper, heart pounding with excitement. Mom was in the kitchen preparing an elaborate dinner. "Mom, look, I won the state art competition. My painting will be displayed at the Capitol building." She glanced at the newspaper. "That's nice, honey. Did you finish your math homework? Your grades have been slipping." That same evening, Thomas came home with a participation certificate from his science fair. Mom proudly hung it on the refrigerator and announced we were having his favorite dessert to celebrate his scientific achievement. These patterns repeated throughout my childhood. When Thomas scored the winning goal in a soccer match, Mom invited the entire team for a backyard barbecue. When I was selected to paint a mural for our school library, she reminded me not to get paint on my clothes because they were expensive. Despite the obvious favoritism, I continued seeking their approval. I maintained straight A's throughout high school, joined clubs, and even participated in student government. I abandoned my dream of attending art school and instead accepted admission to the state university with a business focus, as my parents suggested. "A practical degree will serve you well," Dad said, his rare moment of career advice delivered like a business transaction. Art can always be a hobby. Thomas, meanwhile, received enthusiastic support when he declared his intention to study engineering at an expensive private university. "We'll make it work," Mom assured him. "Your education is our priority." College offered my first taste of independence. Away from home, I snuck in art classes alongside my business courses, finding joy in the creative expression I'd been denied. I graduated with honors, an achievement that received a perfunctory, "That's what we expected," from my mother and a check from my father. After graduation, I knew returning home wasn't an option if I wanted to preserve my sanity and pursue my passion. Despite my parents' disapproval, I moved to Chicago proper, determined to find my own path without their constant judgment shadowing every decision. "You're paying city prices for a shoebox apartment when you could live at home for free," Mom pointed out during our weekly phone call. "But suit yourself. You always were stubborn." And then little did I know that the physical distance would only be the beginning of my independence journey. The emotional separation would prove far more challenging and far more necessary than I ever anticipated. Moving to Chicago after college felt like finally taking my first real breath. I found a small but charming two-bedroom apartment in Wicker Park with Jessica, a graphic designer I met through a roommate finding app. She quickly became more than just someone to split rent with. Jessica was the supportive friend I never knew I needed, the kind who noticed when I was retreating into myself after difficult family calls. My first job came through a connection from a college professor, an entry-level position at Meridian Advertising. The pay was barely enough to cover rent, groceries, and student loan payments, but it was a foot in the door of a creative field. My title was junior graphic designer, but in reality, I was more of a universal assistant managing coffee runs and file organization alongside occasional design tasks. "You need to ask for more design assignments," Jessica advised one night, as I complained about reformatting spreadsheets all day. "They won't know what you're capable of unless you show them." Taking her advice, I started arriving early to work on sample designs for upcoming client projects. Marcus Johnson, a senior designer who noticed my extra efforts, began mentoring me unofficially. He was the first person to take my artistic ambitions seriously. "You have raw talent, Pauline," he told me after reviewing my portfolio. "But you need to believe in yourself enough to let others see it." Encouraged by Marcus, I started a side hustle creating custom digital artwork for local businesses. My first commission came from a coffee shop down the street from our apartment. The owner wanted a mural design that could be transferred to his wall. I spent every evening for a week perfecting it, and when it was finally displayed, the pride I felt was unlike anything I had experienced from my academic achievements. The side business grew slowly but steadily. I created logos for startups, illustrated promotional materials for small events, and designed custom art pieces for residential clients. Each project built my confidence and portfolio, though the income remained supplemental at best. Financial independence was a constant struggle. Chicago's cost of living meant careful budgeting and occasional sacrifices. When my car needed expensive repairs, I sold it instead and committed to public transportation. When friends invited me to expensive restaurants, I suggested coffee dates instead. These decisions, though practical, provided additional ammunition for my mother's criticism. "I don't understand why you're struggling so much with that college degree," she remarked during one of our weekly Sunday family dinners that I diligently commuted 90 minutes each way to attend. "Thomas's friend Gregory graduated last year and already has a company car." These dinners became increasingly difficult to endure. Every personal update I shared was met with comparison to someone more successful, or suggestions for how I could be doing better. Meanwhile, Thomas's academic updates were received with enthusiastic praise, even for ordinary achievements like completing a standard course requirement. "Did I tell you Thomas might graduate with honors?" Mom would interject regardless of the previous conversation topic. "His professor thinks he has real potential in engineering." Marcus noticed my Monday morning emotional hangovers after these Sunday dinners. "You know you can set boundaries with family, right?" he suggested one day over lunch. My therapist helped me realize I was sacrificing my mental health to avoid disappointing my parents. But their disappointment is their problem, not yours. His words resonated, but implementing them felt impossible. Family obligation had been programmed into me since childhood. Still, I began making small attempts at independence, like occasionally missing a Sunday dinner when work deadlines loomed, or limiting my calls with Mom to once a week, instead of her preferred daily check-ins. Each tiny boundary was met with disproportionate resistance. Missing dinner meant guilt-laden texts about family loyalty. Not answering a call prompted concerns about my safety, followed by accusations of selfishness once I was confirmed alive. The tension escalated when Thomas announced his upcoming graduation with honors in mechanical engineering. Suddenly, every family conversation revolved around graduation plans, Thomas's job prospects, and the celebration worthy of such an achievement. "We're thinking of renting the country club for a proper party," Mom announced 6 months before the actual graduation. "Nothing but the best for our graduate." I nodded and smiled, ignoring the fact that my own college graduation had been marked with a dinner at a chain restaurant where the conversation centered around Thomas's college acceptance. The familiar sting of differential treatment had dulled with time, but never fully disappeared. What I didn't realize then was that Thomas's graduation would become the catalyst for the most significant shift in our family dynamic, one that would finally force me to stand up for myself in ways I never imagined possible. The breaking point came on an unusually warm Tuesday in May. I'd been preparing for weeks for a presentation to Horizon Tech, a potential client that could transform Meridian's portfolio and my career trajectory. Landing this account would mean a possible promotion from junior to associate designer, and the creative freedom I'd been working toward for 2 years. That same Tuesday, Mom had scheduled an emergency family dinner to discuss Thomas's graduation party details. The dinner wasn't initially on our calendar, but Mom insisted everyone rearrange their schedules because Thomas's girlfriend might be bringing her parents to the graduation, adding complexity to the seating arrangements that apparently required immediate family consultation. The client meeting had been on my calendar for a month. I'd spent weekends and evenings preparing mock-ups, researching their brand, and rehearsing my presentation points. Marcus had even stayed late the previous evening to help me refine my pitch. "This is your moment," he encouraged. "You've put in the work. Now show them what you can do." The morning of the presentation, my phone buzzed with a text from Mom. "Don't forget dinner tonight at 6. Dad is leaving work early. Very important to finalize graduation plans. Thomas is counting on everyone's input." My stomach tightened. The Horizon meeting was scheduled for 4 p.m. downtown. Even if it went perfectly on schedule, which client meetings rarely did, there was no way I could make it to my parents' suburban home by 6 p.m. After careful consideration, I responded, "Can't make dinner tonight. Important work presentation that could lead to promotion. Can we FaceTime after so I can still contribute to the planning?" 3 dots appeared, immediately disappeared, reappeared, then family comes first. "Pauline, Thomas only graduates once. Work will always be there. We expect you at 6. I took a deep breath and typed, "I'm sorry, but I can't reschedule this. It's too important for my career. I promise to come next Sunday and help with whatever needs doing." My phone began ringing immediately. I silenced it and focused on preparing for my presentation, though my hands trembled slightly as I organized my portfolio materials. Throughout the day, texts accumulated. "Your brother is very disappointed. Dad has rearranged important meetings for this. Is this really the example you want to set for Thomas?" Each message amplified my anxiety, but I remained resolved. This presentation represented everything I'd been working toward, and for once my professional aspirations needed to take priority over family drama about seating arrangements. The client meeting began precisely at 4 p.m. Despite my internal turmoil, the presentation flowed better than I'd dared hope. The Horizon marketing team asked insightful questions that showed genuine interest in my concepts. Their creative director nodded approvingly at my portfolio samples, and by 5:30 p.m., they were discussing timeline expectations for moving forward. "We'll be in touch by Friday," the director said, shaking my hand firmly. "Your approach to our brand refresh is exactly the direction we've been looking for." I floated out of the building on a cloud of professional validation. For the first time, my work had been recognized on its merits by industry professionals. Marcus texted immediately asking for updates, and I replied with excited bullet points about the positive reception. It wasn't until I was on the train home that I checked my family messages. 12 missed calls and a voicemail from Mom. I braced myself and listened. "Pauline Elizabeth Williams." Her voice was cold and precise. "Your absence tonight speaks volumes about your priorities. While we're trying to celebrate your brother's achievements, you're too self-absorbed with your little drawing job to support this family. I've never been so disappointed. You're 27 years old, living in a cramped apartment with a roommate working a job that barely pays the bills, pursuing a hobby you call a career. When will you grow up and amount to something worthwhile? Thomas is 5 years younger and already has job offers with real companies. What do you have to show for yourself? Call me when you decide family matters." The message hit like physical blows, each word striking vulnerable places she knew too well. By the time I reached my stop, tears streamed silently down my face. I walked the 3 blocks to my apartment in a daze, barely registering the spring evening around me. Jessica was cooking dinner when I arrived. One look at my face, and she abandoned the stove, guiding me to the couch. "What happened? Did the presentation go badly?" "The presentation was great," I said, voice hollow. It was the aftermath that destroyed me. I played the voicemail on speaker. Jessica's expression shifted from concern to outrage as my mother's voice filled our small living room. "That's emotional abuse, Pauline," she said when the message ended. "No mother should speak to her child that way no matter what." "Maybe she's right," I whispered. "Maybe I am a disappointment. Thomas is younger and more successful. Maybe my art is just a hobby I'm pretending is a career." "Stop that right now!" Jessica's voice was firm. "Your mother doesn't get to define your worth. The Horizon team saw your talent today. Marcus sees it, I see it. Your clients see it. The only person who can't see it is the one who should have been your biggest supporter." We stayed up late that night, Jessica alternating between righteous anger on my behalf and gentle reassurance. She shared stories of her own family's dysfunctional dynamics and how establishing boundaries had preserved her relationship with her parents while protecting her mental health. "You don't have to cut them off, Dia," she explained, "but you can decide how and when you engage and what behavior you'll accept." I nodded, though the concept felt foreign. In my family, boundaries were seen as rebellion and independence as betrayal. Still, as I finally crawled into bed near midnight, something had shifted inside me. The devastating hurt remained, but beneath it, a small spark of anger began to glow. Not the destructive kind, but the protective fire that signals enough is enough. Sleep eluded me that night. I replayed childhood memories through this new lens of understanding. The art competition, the endless praise for Thomas's mediocre achievements alongside dismissal of my significant ones. The conditional love dependent on conformity to parental expectations. As dawn broke, I reached a decision I would take 3 days of no contact to process my feelings before deciding how to move forward with my family relationships. Little did I know what those 3 days would reveal. For 3 days, I immersed myself in work, channeling my emotional turmoil into creative projects. I silenced family notifications on my phone, without blocking them outright, a small step toward establishing boundaries while avoiding a complete rupture. Jessica respected my emotional processing time, offering quiet support through homemade meals and understanding nods when I declined social invitations to stay home and sketch. On the third evening, while waiting for pasta water to boil, I casually opened Facebook on my phone. I rarely check social media, finding the highlight reels of acquaintances' lives more draining than inspiring. But that night, procrastinating dinner preparations, I scrolled mindlessly through updates. Then I saw it. A post from my mother shared 12 hours earlier, already accumulating dozens of comments. "Proud mother moment. My brilliant son Thomas Williams graduates with honors in mechanical engineering next month." From the little boy who built Lego masterpieces to the young man revolutionizing engineering solutions, "You have exceeded every expectation and filled our lives with pride. Your dedication to excellence inspires everyone around you. You've worked so hard for this achievement, and watching you grow into the incredible man you are today has been the greatest joy of my life. Dad and I couldn't be prouder of the bright future ahead of you. Proud mom. Engineering, my amazing son." Attached was a professional photograph of Thomas in his university hoodie, smiling confidently alongside a childhood photo of him opening a science kit Christmas present. The comments section overflowed with congratulations, not just for Thomas, but for my mother's exceptional parenting that produced such a successful son. "Margaret, you and Robert have done an amazing job raising such an accomplished young man," wrote my mother's friend from book club. "The apple doesn't fall far from the tree like mother like son," commented a cousin. My aunt wrote, "You've always put your children first, Margaret. This is your reward for all those sacrifices." I stood frozen pasta water boiling over unnoticed as I scrolled through dozens of similar comments. No mention of Thomas having a sister. No acknowledgement that my parents had 2 children, not one. I had been erased from the family narrative. As I continued reading, I discovered through the comments that an extravagant graduation celebration was being planned at the Lakeview Country Club, with a 5-course dinner, live band, and custom decorations. My mother responded to questions about the venue with, "Nothing but the best for our graduate. This level of achievement deserves proper recognition." The stark contrast between this effusive pride and her voicemail calling me a disappointment 3 days earlier made me physically ill. I turned off the stove and sat at our small kitchen table, trying to process this new layer of hurt. Before I could fully absorb the Facebook discovery, my phone buzzed with a text from my mother. Pauline, we need $2,000 from you for Thomas's graduation party by next week. Since you couldn't be bothered to attend the planning dinner, the least you can do is contribute financially. The country club requires a deposit, Venmo preferred. No greeting, no acknowledgement of her hurtful voicemail, no apology. Just a demand for money I didn't have to spare for a celebration I hadn't been consulted about, for a brother who hadn't bothered to contact me himself. I laughed aloud, a sharp sound that held no humor. The audacity was so breathtaking, it circled back to absurdity. $2,000 represented 2 months of rent or the new computer I'd been saving for, to handle larger design projects or the emergency fund I'd been slowly building. Jessica came home to find me still at the kitchen table, cold pasta water in the pot, staring at my phone. You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost. Wordlessly, I showed her the Facebook post, then the text. Holy manipulation, Batman, she whispered as she read. Please tell me you're not considering this. I don't even have $2,000 to spare, I said. And even if I did, even if you did, this is ridiculous, Jessica finished. She calls you a failure and then demands cash for Golden Boy's party. That's not how family works. I showed Jessica screenshots of earlier conversations where similar financial family obligations had been presented. $500 for Dad's surprise birthday cruise last year, $300 for Christmas dinner I couldn't attend. Due to weather-canceled flights, various contributions to family gifts I received no credit for. Pauline, this is a pattern of financial abuse on top of the emotional manipulation, Jessica said gently. They treat you like an ATM while making you feel worthless. Later that evening, Marcus called to share news about the Horizon project. After updating him on the positive client feedback, I found myself confiding the family situation. As someone from a similarly dysfunctional family background who had established healthy boundaries, his perspective proved invaluable. Your mother's behavior is textbook narcissistic, he explained. The golden child scapegoat dynamic with you and your brother, the conditional love, the public image versus private reality. I lived that life until I was 30. How did you break free? I asked. Therapy distance and learning to say no without justifying my decisions, he replied. The hardest part was accepting that I couldn't change them, only my response to them. After our call, I sat with these insights, examining my family dynamics from this new perspective. The revelation wasn't just that my mother's behavior was wrong, but that it was predictable and common enough to have terminology associated with it. Somehow this knowledge made me feel less alone, less defective. For the first time, I saw clearly that this wasn't about my worth or achievements. My mother would have found ways to belittle even my greatest successes, because her narrative required Thomas to be exceptional and me to be lacking. This understanding didn't erase the pain, but it provided context that allowed me to separate her assessments from reality. As midnight approached, another text arrived from my mother. I notice you haven't responded about the party contribution. This is exactly the kind of selfishness I was talking about. Thomas has always supported your little art projects. The least you could do is help celebrate his real achievement. In that moment, something crystallized within me. The decision I needed to make wasn't just about $2,000 for a party. It was about the value I placed on myself and what treatment I would accept moving forward. The next morning, I woke with unexpected clarity. After years of trying to earn approval that would never come, I finally understood that my mother's perception had nothing to do with my actual worth. The realization felt like setting down a heavy backpack I'd been carrying since childhood. Before heading to work, I crafted a response to my mother's demand. Mom, I will not be contributing $2,000 to Thomas's graduation party. This amount is financially unfeasible for me, and the demand comes without prior consultation about the event planning or budget. I wish Thomas well on his graduation, and will send him a personal gift to celebrate his achievement. In the future, please discuss potential financial commitments with me before making assumptions about my participation. I pressed send before I could second-guess myself, then silenced my phone and headed to the office. The simple act of declining without apology or elaborate justification felt revolutionary. By lunchtime, my phone had accumulated multiple notifications. My mother had escalated from text messages to voicemails, each more indignant than the last. The most recent one declared I was tearing apart the family with selfishness and suggested my refusal was motivated by jealousy of Thomas's success. More surprisingly, my father had called twice in unprecedented frequency from a man who typically communicated through my mother. His voicemail was more measured but equally pressuring. Pauline, your mother is upset about the party arrangements. Whatever disagreement you two are having, family events shouldn't suffer. Call me to discuss a reasonable contribution that works with your budget. Even Thomas, who rarely contacted me directly, sent a text, "Hey sis, Mom's pretty stressed about this party. I know you guys clash sometimes, but it would mean a lot if you could help out. It's kind of a big deal for me." The coordinated pressure campaign confirmed what Marcus had described about family systems resistant to change. My small boundary had triggered an all-hands response designed to push me back into compliance. Instead of immediately responding, I scheduled an emergency session with Dr. Winters, a therapist I'd seen sporadically since moving to Chicago. Her earliest availability was lunch the following day, which gave me time to process my feelings rather than reacting defensively. That evening, Jessica and Marcus came over for moral support and to help me practice potential responses to family pressure. We sat around our small living room, Jessica and I on the worn sofa, Marcus cross-legged on the floor, role-playing various scenarios. The key is staying calm and consistent, Marcus advised after a particularly heated mock conversation where he played my mother with unsettling accuracy. They're expecting emotional reactions they can use to dismiss your position as irrational. Jessica nodded. And remember, no is a complete sentence. You don't need to justify your decision. We practiced simple direct responses I could use when emotionally triggered. I've made my decision. This doesn't work for me. I understand you're disappointed, but my answer remains the same. I need to go now. We can talk when everyone is calmer. The rehearsal helped transform abstract advice into practical communication tools. By the end of the evening, I felt more confident in my ability to maintain boundaries without being drawn into emotional manipulation. The next day, my therapy session with Dr. Winters provided additional validation and strategies. After listening to recent events and reviewing our previous discussions about family dynamics, she leaned forward with quiet intensity. "Pauline, what would you tell a friend whose parent called them a disappointment, demanded large sums of money, and then coordinated family pressure when they declined?" The question shifted my perspective immediately. I'd tell them they deserve better treatment and have every right to set boundaries. Dr. Winter smiled. "Exactly. Yet you struggle to grant yourself that same compassion. The guilt you feel isn't because you've done something wrong, but because you've been conditioned to prioritize your family's wants over your most basic needs." We spent the remainder of the session discussing healthy family relationships versus dysfunctional ones and developing a framework for interactions that protected my well-being while allowing for potential future relationship improvement. "Your mother may never change," Dr. Winters cautioned, "but you can change how her behavior affects you." As I left her office, my phone rang with an unknown number. Assuming it was another family member enlisted in the campaign, I almost declined the call, but professional curiosity prompted me to answer. "Is this Pauline Williams? This is David Chen from Horizon Tech. I wanted to personally let you know that our team was incredibly impressed with your presentation. We'd like to move forward with your concepts for our rebranding, and we've authorized a larger budget than initially discussed to implement your full vision." The validation came at precisely the right moment, an external confirmation of my professional value that directly contradicted my mother's dismissal of my little drawing job. I thanked David professionally, while internally celebrating this career breakthrough. By the time I returned to the office, I had decided on my next steps. I would attend Thomas's graduation party, but entirely on my terms. No financial contribution, no apologies for setting boundaries, and no tolerance for disrespect. Additionally, I would create something meaningful that showcased my artistic talents as my brother's gift, simultaneously celebrating his achievement and asserting my own worth. The path forward wouldn't be easy, but for the first time I felt prepared to navigate family dynamics from a position of self-respect rather than desperate approval seeking. The party was 3 weeks away, giving me time to strengthen my resolve and prepare for what would undoubtedly be a challenging family encounter. That evening, I temporarily blocked all family contacts on my phone, not as a permanent solution, but as a mental health break to focus on my Horizon project and personal preparation. This breathing space would allow me to approach the upcoming confrontation from a place of calm determination rather than reactive defensiveness. The boundary setting had begun, and despite the difficulty, it felt unexpectedly liberating. The 3 weeks leading up to Thomas's graduation party transformed me. With family communications temporarily blocked, I channeled my energy into professional excellence and personal growth. The Horizon Project became my creative focus, with each design decision made confidently, without the shadow of maternal criticism. Concurrently, I worked on Thomas's graduation gift, a custom digital artwork that incorporated elements of his engineering studies with subtle symbolism of his life journey. As the party date approached, I carefully selected my outfit, a tailored navy blue dress that projected professional success, paired with the silver earrings my grandmother had given me before she passed a reminder of family connection beyond my parents. Jessica helped me style my hair in a sophisticated updo that made me look polished without appearing like I was trying too hard. "Remember, this is about you showing up authentically, not proving anything to them," she reminded me as I prepared to leave. "You look gorgeous and accomplished." Because you are. The drive to my parents' suburban home felt surreal after the 3 week communication break. As I approached the familiar neighborhood, childhood memories surfaced, but I viewed them now through the lens of adult understanding rather than childish hurt. The Lakeview Country Club parking lot was filled with luxury vehicles when I arrived. My modest Honda seemed out of place among the Mercedes and BMWs, a visual representation of the values gap between my life choices and my parents' social aspirations. Inside the clubhouse had been transformed with elaborate decorations in Thomas's university colors. A professional photographer circulated, capturing carefully orchestrated family moments. A string quartet played in the corner, providing sophisticated background music for the cocktail hour preceding dinner. My mother spotted me immediately as I entered. Her expression cycled rapidly through surprise, irritation, and finally the practiced social smile she reserved for public settings. "Pauline, you decided to join us after all," she said, air kissing near my cheek. "I wasn't sure after your behavior lately." "I wouldn't miss Thomas's celebration," I replied calmly. "Congratulations on putting together such a lovely event." The neutrality of my response visibly disoriented her. She had prepared for either confrontation or apology, not poised adult interaction. Dad approached next in his awkward side hug, betraying discomfort with the unresolved tension. "Good to see you, kiddo. Busy at work lately?" "Very," I confirmed. "I just landed the Horizon Tech account, actually. It's a significant opportunity for my career." "That's nice," he replied, clearly struggling to assess whether this was impressive without Margaret's cues. "Thomas has 3 job offers already, all with major engineering firms." "That's wonderful for him," I said sincerely. "He's worked hard for those opportunities." Thomas himself seemed genuinely pleased to see me when he broke away from his university friends. At 22, he embodied confidence born of consistent validation, yet something in his expression suggested awareness of the family dynamic. "Hey, Pauline. Thanks for coming," he said, giving me a quick hug. "Things have been weird with Mom lately, huh?" "You could say that," I acknowledged with a small smile. "But today's about celebrating your achievement. Congratulations on graduating with honors." Various relatives approached throughout the cocktail hour, some with sincere interest in my life, others with thinly veiled comparisons between my career path and Thomas's more conventional success. To each I responded with genuine warmth while firmly redirecting inappropriate comments. Yes, art and engineering are very different fields. I find creative problem solving incredibly fulfilling. I told Uncle Stephen when he suggested I should have followed Thomas's example in career choice. Actually, my apartment in Wicker Park puts me right in the heart of Chicago's design community, which has been invaluable for networking. I explained to Aunt Patricia when she expressed concern about my living situation. Throughout these interactions, I maintained the calm demeanor doctor. Winters and I had practiced neither defensive nor apologetic about my life choices. Each conversation strengthened my resolve that I was exactly where I needed to be, pursuing the path right for me, regardless of family approval. Dinner service began with a formal announcement, guests directed to assigned tables labeled with creative engineering terms. I discovered I'd been seated at the auxiliary systems table, the furthest from the head table, where my parents Thomas and his girlfriend's family were positioned. The seating arrangement was clearly deliberate, a physical manifestation of my peripheral family status. Rather than feeling hurt, I found myself amused by the transparent pettiness. The auxiliary systems table included several of Thomas's professors and their spouses, providing unexpected networking opportunities with academics who appreciated creative approaches to technical challenges. After the main course, my mother rose for what was clearly a carefully rehearsed speech. She detailed Thomas's achievements from childhood science fair projects through collegiate honors, painting a picture of uninterrupted excellence. She thanked everyone who contributed to this spectacular celebration. With a pointed glance toward me, the implied message of my financial non-contribution, clear to anyone aware of the background tension. The speech concluded with a toast to Thomas's bright future, champagne glasses raised throughout the room. I participated sincerely, genuinely proud of my brother's accomplishments, despite the complex family dynamics. As dessert was served, I approached the head table with the carefully wrapped artwork I'd created. Thomas opened it curiously, his expression shifting to genuine appreciation as he examined the detailed digital creation. "Pauline, this is incredible," he said, voice reflecting authentic admiration. "You captured exactly what engineering means to me, but made it beautiful." "Custom artwork from a professional designer doesn't come cheap," I said with a warm smile. "Consider it my contribution to your graduation celebration." My mother attempted to interject, reaching for the artwork. "Let me see what Pauline's little drawing looks like." Thomas surprisingly held it back. "It's not a little drawing, Mom. This is professional digital art. Pauline's really talented." The moment created a small ripple of tension at the table. My mother's dismissive attitude contrasted awkwardly with Thomas's genuine appreciation, making her diminishment of my work conspicuous to his girlfriend's parents. "Pauline works in graphic design, creating visual brand identities for major companies." Thomas explained to his girlfriend's father, an unexpected act of sibling support. "She just landed a big tech client, right?" The opening allowed me to briefly describe the Horizon project in response to interested questions from the table. As I spoke confidently about my professional achievements, my mother's expression tightened the narrative of my inadequacy, visibly clashing with the composed, successful woman standing before her dinner guests. "How fascinating," said Thomas's girlfriend's mother. "I always thought artistic careers were impractical, but it sounds like you found a wonderful niche combining creativity with business." "Pauline has always been determined to follow her own path." My mother interjected, her tone suggesting this was problematic rather than admirable. "No matter how many opportunities we presented for more conventional success." The moment had arrived, the public undermining I'd anticipated and prepared for. Instead of reacting emotionally, I smiled warmly at the assembled dinner guests. "That's true, Mom. I've built a career that aligns with my values and talents, rather than external expectations." The recent Horizon contract actually represents the largest account my firm has landed this year, and they specifically requested my design vision for their rebranding. The calm confidence in my voice created a pocket of silence at the table, the rehearsed family dynamic disrupted by my refusal to accept the assigned role of disappointment. My mother recovered quickly with a tight smile. "Well, we're just glad you could make time in your busy schedule for your brother's special day." "I wouldn't have missed it," I replied, turning to Thomas. "Congratulations again. I'm genuinely proud of you." As I turned to return to my table, I caught my Aunt Laura watching the interaction with thoughtful interest. Unlike my mother's sisters, Aunt Laura was Dad's sibling somewhat removed from the family power dynamics. She followed me as I walked away from the head table. "That was gracefully handled," she said quietly when we were out of earshot. "I've watched this dynamic for years but never quite knew how to address it." "It's taken me a long time to see it clearly myself," I admitted. "Your mother has always needed to control the narrative." Aunt Laura observed. When you stopped complying, it threatened her self-image as the perfect mother. Her understanding was unexpectedly validating a family member, acknowledging the reality I'd experienced, rather than the carefully constructed public image. If you ever need family connection without the drama, my door is always open, she offered, writing her personal email on a cocktail napkin. Sometimes family is what you make it, not just what you're born into. The simple act of kindness brought unexpected tears to my eyes. I thanked her sincerely before excusing myself to the restroom to regain composure. When I returned, the party was shifting toward after-dinner socializing. I circulated briefly, fulfilling social obligations with various family members, then made my way toward the exit. I had accomplished what I came to do, supported. Thomas maintained my boundaries and presented myself authentically, despite pressure to conform to family narratives. As I retrieved my coat, Thomas approached alone. Thanks for coming, Pauline, and for the amazing artwork. It's the most thoughtful gift I received. You earned the celebration, I said sincerely. I hope you know I'm happy for you regardless of what's happening between Mom and me. He nodded, looking momentarily younger than his 22 years. I've noticed things over the years, the different ways she treats us. I didn't always know how to address it without seeming ungrateful for the support I received. You don't need to apologize for being celebrated, I assured him. My issues with Mom aren't about you. Maybe we could grab coffee sometime without the family drama, he suggested. I'd like to know more about your design work. It seems really cool. I'd like that, I replied, surprised by the genuine connection forming outside our prescribed family roles. With a final hug for my brother and a distant wave toward my parents, I walked out of the country club toward my car. The evening air felt fresh and clean, symbolic of the new beginning this confrontation represented. I had attended the graduation party entirely on my terms, neither contributing financially nor compromising my dignity, and emerged with my self-respect not just intact, but strengthened. Driving away from the suburban enclave toward my city apartment, I felt a profound sense of release. For 27 years, I had measured my worth through my mother's critical eyes. Tonight, I had finally seen myself clearly through my own. The weeks following Thomas's graduation party brought unexpected transformation. The morning after standing my ground, I experienced an emotional release so powerful it surprised me. Driving to work, a song on the radio triggered tears that weren't sadness, but relief, the profound unburdening of releasing expectations that had constrained me since childhood. By the time I parked at Meridian's offices, I felt lighter than I had in years. This newfound emotional freedom coincided with intense preparation for my upcoming art exhibition. What had begun as a small showing at a local gallery had expanded into a featured exhibition after the gallery owner saw my latest works. The collection, titled Unseen, explored themes of identity and perception through digital and traditional media, unconsciously reflecting my personal journey of self-discovery. Jessica and Marcus became my steadfast supporters, helping transport larger pieces to the gallery and offering constructive feedback on arrangement and lighting. Their unwavering belief in my artistic vision provided the external validation I was learning to provide for myself. This piece captures something profound, Marcus said, standing before a mixed media work depicting a woman partially obscured by others' expectations, represented by translucent layers that distorted her true form. The viewer can see her completely only by changing their perspective. That's the point, I replied. We're all viewing each other through layers of projection and assumption. 2 weeks of intense preparation culminated in the exhibition opening night. I'd invited colleagues, clients, and friends, but deliberately not my immediate family. This night needed to be about my artistic achievement, free from the shadow of familial judgment. The gallery transformed under evening lighting, my artwork creating conversation spaces where attendees gathered to discuss themes and techniques. I circulated nervously at first, then with increasing confidence as positive reactions affirmed the connection between my creative vision and viewers' experiences. Pauline, these are extraordinary, David from Horizon Tech commented, examining a digital piece incorporating subtle elements similar to his company's rebranding. I'm even more confident in our decision to work with you. Midway through the evening, I spotted an unexpected group entering the gallery, Aunt Laura, accompanied by two cousins I rarely saw at family gatherings. Their arrival, independent of my parents' influence, represented a new kind of family connection based on genuine interest rather than obligation. "We wouldn't miss your first major exhibition," Aunt Laura said, embracing me warmly. "Your work is breathtaking." My cousins Emma and Jacob explored the gallery enthusiastically, asking insightful questions about my creative process and techniques. Their engagement felt like rediscovering family on entirely new terms. Connections formed through shared interests rather than mandatory holiday gatherings. By evening's end, the gallery owner approached with surprising news. 5 pieces had sold, including the largest mixed media work that had been central to the exhibition. "This is unusual for an opening night, especially for a debut exhibition," she explained. "You've clearly touched something in viewers. I'd like to discuss representing you more permanently." The professional recognition combined with the financial validation of sales cemented what the Horizon contract had begun, a confirmation that my creative path was not just personally fulfilling, but professionally viable. My little drawing job had evolved into a legitimate career with tangible success metrics even my parents would recognize, though I no longer needed their validation to value my achievements. 1 month after the exhibition, additional positive changes accumulated rapidly. Meridian promoted me to associate designer with a substantial raise following the successful Horizon implementation. The increased income combined with art sales allowed me to begin apartment hunting for my own place, a studio in an arts-friendly neighborhood with natural light perfect for creating. Jessica supported my decision to move out, though we promised to maintain our close friendship. "You've outgrown more than just your family's expectations," she observed. "You're ready for your own space that reflects who you're becoming." My relationship with my parents evolved into limited contact, maintained on my terms. Our interactions became less frequent, but more authentic, as I no longer engaged with manipulation tactics or responded to comparative comments. When my mother referenced Thomas's job offers, I congratulated him sincerely without defending my own choices. When she criticized my new apartment for being impractically artistic, I simply acknowledged her opinion without absorbing it as truth. More surprisingly, Thomas initiated independent contact, following through on his suggestion for coffee without family mediation. Over lattes at a downtown cafe, we began rebuilding a sibling relationship outside our assigned family roles. "I've been thinking about what you said at the party," he admitted, "about pursuing what aligns with your values rather than external expectations. It's made me question whether engineering is really my passion or just the path of least resistance." "What would you do if expectations weren't a factor?" I asked. "Honestly, something combining engineering with environmental conservation. But Mom thinks that's less prestigious than corporate work." Our conversation opened a new dimension of understanding between us two adults, navigating parental expectations from different positions but with shared experiences. We agreed to monthly sibling meetings, establishing a relationship independent of our parents' influence. Aunt Laura became an unexpected source of family connection and support. Her home provided neutral ground for occasional family gatherings without the charged atmosphere of my parents' house. Through her, I maintained relationships with extended family while establishing healthier boundaries with my parents. Professional therapy with Dr. Winters continued helping me process childhood patterns without becoming trapped in resentment. "The goal isn't to dwell in the past," she reminded me, "but to understand its influence so you can make conscious choices moving forward." Gradually, I developed a more balanced perspective on my family history. My mother's behavior stemmed from her own unresolved issues and unfulfilled dreams, not my inherent worth. My father's emotional distance reflected generational patterns of masculine stoicism rather than specific rejection. Understanding these dynamics didn't excuse harmful behavior, but provided context that helped me respond compassionately without becoming vulnerable to manipulation. Personal growth extended beyond family relationships into new social connections. Through art community events, I met Adrian, a musician whose creative passion complemented my own. Our connection developed naturally based on mutual respect and shared values, rather than the need to fill emotional voids. "What I appreciate most is how you see me completely," he said one evening as we walked along the lakefront. not as a projection of who you think I should be. I had to learn to see myself that way first, I replied, recognizing how much my journey had prepared me for healthy connection. Looking back on that pivotal moment when my mother called me a disappointment, I realized it had catalyzed necessary change. The painful experience had ultimately freed me from the exhausting pursuit of approval I could never attain. In standing firm against financial manipulation and refusing to accept diminishment of my achievements, I had reclaimed definition of my own success. The journey wasn't about cutting family ties, but about establishing relationships based on mutual respect rather than control and compliance. Some connections strengthened through this transformation, while others required ongoing boundary maintenance. The most significant change wasn't external, but internal. The quiet confidence that my worth was inherent, not dependent on others' assessment or approval. Life continues to present challenges and moments of self-doubt, but now I face them from a foundation of self-acceptance rather than desperate validation seeking. My creative work has deepened, reflecting authentic expression rather than attempts to prove my value. The little girl who once sought recognition for her watercolor now creates freely, finding joy in the process, independent of external judgment. If you've experienced similar family dynamics, remember that your worth isn't measured by others' ability to recognize it. Breaking generational patterns requires courage, but creates the possibility of authentic connection, both with yourself and others who value you completely. Have you ever had to establish boundaries with family? Share your experience in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share to help others who might be struggling with similar situations. Remember, the most important approval is the kind you give yourself. Thank you for listening to my journey.